Welcome to the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, the longest-running podcast specifically focused on the freestanding ambulatory surgery industry. We would like to thank our sponsors, Surgical Information Systems, providing cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers, RFX Solutions, your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software, MedServe, which is the only digital narcotic cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping standardize processes, compliance, eliminate paper logs, and prevent drug diversion, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, please visit our website at ascpodcast.com.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, recorded on May 1st, 2025, from ASTA 2025 Conference and Expo at the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center in Aurora, Colorado. This episode, 244, of the longest-running podcast of the ASC industry. I'm Kathy Hickman, co-host and your guest host for this episode. I'm the administrator at Duchess Ambulatory Surgical Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. As a reminder, the regulatory landscape for ASCs is constantly changing. The content in this episode reflects the most current information available at the time of recording. We encourage all ASCs to remain vigilant and keep up with any updates or new guidelines released by relevant regulatory authorities. And now I'd like to introduce the podcast host, John Goehle.
Thank you, Kathleen, and it's great to be here on a second day. We have a smaller crowd today. I don't know. I think everybody's very busy. These are very busy conferences. But we have a nicer location, don't we? We're looking right on the mountains here, directly into the sun. And rumor has it, when we uploaded the podcast yesterday, we had a lot of leaf blowers going on, and apparently that didn't get into the recording. So it sounds like our equipment is working well. So today we're going to focus on what happened after the first full day of the conference. So we are in the end of the first day, almost to the end of the first day. We're just before the happy hour, so everybody's like looking ready to go to the happy hour. So I need to keep this short and sweet. And we're going to concentrate on what your experiences were today. Just like yesterday, one of the things that we try to focus on is the experience, the educational experience you get here, the interpersonal experience you have with your colleagues, and lastly, your experience with the vendors. So I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask everybody, and whoever is interested in talking on it, everybody I'm sure has some comments, and we'll just raise your hand. And I know I've got a couple people that have said, I just want to listen, but that didn't happen yesterday, didn't it? So they think they're going to be quiet. So our first question for the day is, which session or speaker really resonated with you today, and why?
This is Simon Schwartz. SRG Colorado. We manage the Colorado ASC Association and the Oregon ASC Association. Rather than focusing on a speaker, the topic this morning that kind of got my brain rolling was the cardiology session. You know, it's a specialty that's making its way into our industry. There's a little bit of a Wild West element to it, and I think hearing a number of the different perspectives that came from the educators really opened up pathways in thinking about how to bring these cases into surgery centers differently. And I think that that's the type of innovative thought that I seek when I come to a conference like this.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was in that same session for a short period of time, and then at our booth, we have a booth here for Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. If you're here, 1324, we're in the last row, so make sure you visit with us.
Or the first row, depending on how you look at it.
That's true. I never thought about it that way. So I ran into one of the vendors, Philips, that works with this cardiology equipment. And I said, I kind of pointed out, on the podcast, Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, we know nothing about cardiology. One of my employees, as a matter of fact, most of my nurses on my staff are like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. And I think that's the fear, right, Kathleen, that you have in your organization too, is this something that we can really do in our organization? So what I asked her, and I think this is going to impact both AHS as well as the podcast, is she is going to get me to visit some cardiology centers. So we'll take some of our members down there and visit that, some of our employees and down there and visit. And we'll try to do a special podcast from there because I think the lesson that would come from it would resonate with all the state associations even.
As somebody with a cardiovascular surgery center in Salem, Oregon, I'll give a shout out to Pacific Cardiovascular Surgery Center. These are facilities that are really going to be helpful to the industry and how to navigate this complicated area. So having vendors and having facilities that are successfully doing this is just, it's a godsend for the industry, especially when it comes to how to increase efficiency in the healthcare system.
And the vendors also have great education. Obviously, the education that they have for the equipment that they have is going to be helpful.
Hi there, it's Katie Pearson, and a lot of you know me from Texas. Anyway, I actually listened to a talk this morning from Vicki Lewis from ECRI, and she talked about systems thinking in approaching your patient safety events and in conducting your RCAs, but actually looking at more from a holistic standpoint on when something happens. A lot of time we get very reactive and just try to put a Band-Aid on the problem that's occurred. And instead she has this really nice approach called the human factors engineering systems thinking, which really takes a look at the entire system as to what broke down and why did it break down and how can we approach it. So it was just a really nice way to kind of think about the way that we're usually just quickly reacting to issues when they happen instead of just blaming it on human error, because a lot of times we do that. It's really looking at things from a more holistic approach. So it was really good.
That's great. We've actually quoted an article recently from ECRI. Sue will remember what it was. I don't remember but that's an organization been around a long time. I don't think it gets a lot of credit for the work that it does. And so maybe we'll meet up with her, Katie, and try to get her on the podcast. I think that would be a great presentation. Anybody else?
I went to a session this morning with Jocelyn Getty from Intuitive. She maybe talked about revenue cycle management, which we've heard a lot about, but really drove home the audit. And I think we just don't realize how important it is to do the audits. And I think she made the point of saying, again, we are not looking at what we're doing. We're letting things go. We have to it's very important that we don't leave money on the table and really look at what's going on in our centers. Don't be complacent. We talked about this again yesterday, and yet I heard it again from a whole nother speaker today. And she's also doing yoga tomorrow, just anybody who is interested in that.
So let's move on to connections. We do have a couple more people coming that will be here in a bit. We're trying to coordinate some things. So the next question is, a big part of these conferences, huge part, in my view, the most important part of it. And I haven't attended a single session. I was in 5 minutes of the cardiology, and I had to make connections. I've been talking to everybody here. But that's a big part of this. I mean, there are so many deals that are struck here. Independent centers, the big centers, the vendors talking to each other, the vendors talking to their, potential clients. So is there any connections that you met, anybody that you met that really you feel like maybe your new best friend or somebody that you're going to be reaching out to and perhaps working with, doing something with?
This is Simon again. I think, I'll speak to the vendor side. I had the ability to, yesterday you had Victor, the pharmaceutical consultant on, and I in Denver have a pharmaceutical consultant named Nick, from Fox Company, who I had the opportunity to introduce them to one another. What came out of that was actually a conversation because Nick was approached by an administrator from the East Coast, and he said, I don't work in the East Coast. So when it talks about connections and how do you create these networks, my ability to connect Nick and Victor together led to this woman named Jennifer, who's having some diversion issues with pharmaceuticals, to finding the connection she needed for her surgery center. Does it equate to them doing work together? I don't know, but at least this is the first step. So it wasn't necessarily a personal connection for me, but my business is to connect people. And I think that watching it happen in real time versus over an email was a real fun thing to watch firsthand.
I will give one example. We have a booth here. This is the first time Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies has ever had a booth. We have had such engagement, and we are in, as we joke, the last aisle, the first aisle, last aisle, at the very back. And yet we've had not what's been good is that it might not be classified as a lot of people. I mean, I think it's a lot more than I thought we would get, but more importantly, a lot of good engagement with these people. So for those of you listeners that are vendors, please think about not only, Simon, I'm going to make a push for the state associations too. The valuable work that ASCA does really comes out during these conferences here. And it's very important if you're not here during the national conference, then the industry doesn't perceive you as a big player in the industry. And the same thing happens with the state associations. State associations rely heavily upon your participation as a vendor to be here. And I can tell you just from firsthand experience how incredibly valuable that has been. You come to a conference like this for the educational programs, you come for the interactions with other people, and you come for the vendor experience. We've already talked about the sessions. We're now talking about interactions with other people. Jeffrey Flynn, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and talk about what you've observed.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Flynn. I'm the president of the New York State Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers. One of the great things I've noticed is a number of the programs that we've used and a number of the vendors we've used for years, their innovations of what they're coming out. Just hearing some of the things that are happening, like for instance, with some of the software companies specifically, and learning about more of the AI areas have really been exciting because they seem to be able to take them to a complete different level now, which will make our lives a lot easier, just implementing some of the new things. RFX was one company who showed what the further additive things they're going to do during the next year is really going to be very effective.
I'm going to point to Lisa. Lisa Altieri is with us. She'll introduce herself in a second. Lisa, this is your first time. I've been here for 35 years, in my 35th year coming. What's resonating with you? The sessions you've been to. I know you're flitting around like anything. So tell me, what's your observation so far, and what are you getting out of it so far?
Thank you. So my name is Lisa Wickens-Altieri, Executive Director of the New York State Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers. And, it's exciting first to be here. I was a little amazed with the number of people and participants, number of vendors. I think one of the things that I'm really interested in and excited about is talking to some of the other states and learning about things that are happening like in Illinois that we weren't aware of. That Illinois is actually working on cardiac regulations right now, as we've been trying to find states similar to New York State that are going through the same process we are. So I think that's been great. I think the keynote today was really eye-opening because bringing that type of speaker to this group, I thought was very positive, very motivational and beneficial at this time that our country is looking at what's happening. So I thought I was very inspired by that. I also think, looking at ambulatory surgery centers as being one of the largest economic drivers in healthcare and where we're expected to see the most growth in the country, it was also very positive for me to see that there were so many more people here. I know I had heard that after COVID that the conferences have gotten a little smaller, and so seeing the number of people was also very encouraging.
And actually, I have some statistics. I just came from the Finance Committee meeting, which met about an hour ago, and we have they think they will go over 1,200 attendees here, which is the first time since 2019 we've reached that number. First time we've gotten back from the COVID, and 175 vendors. So this will be an extremely successful conference. And Lisa and Jeffrey, with New York State Association, and I'm sorry, so Kathleen too. A lot of us from the New York State Association here. Our most popular event during the year is, of course, that, and it's the major profit driver. So, and I know we've had people flitting in and out. One of the things we were talking about is how important it is for vendors. A lot of our listeners are vendors. And it's important for everybody to know how important it is for you to be here. And I think I said it just before you came. If you're not here at the National Association, and if you're active in a particular state and you're not there at the State Association, there is definitely a perception that you're no longer a player in the ASC industry, because our attendees are very loyal to the people that show up. So were there any regulatory updates or compliance strategies that caught your attention, and what steps should ASCs take to stay compliant? Kathleen, it sounds like you were at one of the sessions.
Yes. So actually, I just completed the Kara Newberry session, and we know that she's just such a dynamic speaker and just a wealth of knowledge. She talked about tariffs, and that is new to us now that we've had a new change in politics and how that's going to affect our ASCs, and that we really should start focusing on that, and that's going to make a bit of a change on our platform and what we do, our ordering, our financials, all those things. And I guess we know tariffs are here, and they're here to stay for a bit, but putting it into the ASC setting is something we probably need to look at as well. And then the fee for site restrictions, what I meant to say, and how there's quite a few states that's becoming a problem with, and they're surrounding the New York region for the few of us that are in the Northeast. So maybe I'm being a little, it's all about me, but it is all about me. It's the New York region, and looking at those states that's becoming a huge issue with them, and it's looming to us.
So Tony, you have an observation.
It's a fairly simple one, I think, but I think that just among the vendors, I think it's interesting the value I really believe they're bringing. We may, again, it's Tony Lyons, I'm with AHS. This is the first year that our organization has had a table at the session, so probably we have a little different perspective. But just the networking among the vendors is very good. There are many added value things, I think, among the different vendors. It's been interesting to talk to them, and it's given me also an added perspective on really great value they bring, and also on some things that you wouldn't even think about that some people are thinking about. I'm just going to give one example. I don't remember the name of the company, but it was in relation to scheduling patients. This was an offshore scheduling out of the Philippines to help surgery centers with the personnel issues related to schedulers. And I thought it was quite interesting, quite innovative, quite a new concept. Maybe it's a generational thing, I don't know, but a lot of interesting things among the vendors and the quality they can bring to the centers.
And that brings up a really good question. Many of you, I think that's one thing everybody's done is they've had a chance to walk around. What are some of the vendors that you have met with that you found some unique solutions? So we're next to two interesting vendors. One is Silikal, Silikal, and they have these. I think they're a poured floor, right? Yeah. They pour the floor. It's a solid floor. It is 3 times stronger than concrete in its drop strength. Gorgeous floors too. Wonderful looking designs there. And it's going to be interesting. I have no idea of pricing, but I'm going to try to talk to them again and see if I can get some more information, because definitely some of our new centers, some of your new centers, Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, for existing centers, it removes the floor and sets it in 8 hours, and you just have to wait an additional hour to do the terminal cleaning. Whereas right now, to lay another epoxy floor, we're down 3 days.
That's right. I was amazed at that. And of course, you have a very resilient floor that's going to last for a while. And then on the other side was Daniel's. It's a biomed company. We've actually run into them with one of our centers. They have reusable sharps containers. So these are reusable sharps containers, and what they do is they're very hard plastic. You put your sharps into it, lock it up, send it off. They empty them out, and then they condition the sharps containers and send them back to their clients. These are very durable items, and I actually witnessed it for the first time at one of our centers, our new center up in Staten Island, Empire, and I was just shocked at it because first question as a surveyor is like, why is it white? It's not a red container like most of them. So again, some wonderful experiences. Anybody else run into any other vendors that you saw walking around?
I was very intrigued with the nasal oxygen. I think anyone here who's clinical or has ever practiced as a nurse would know that nasal oxygen is generally 6 liters per minute is the highest we ever would do. Well, they're doing 60 and 70 liters per minute. And I was amazed to explain, I don't know the concept. And basically it's for specific surgery centers, mostly GI. And there's a huge cost savings and time efficiency related to this because these are for MAC cases or prone patients, a lot of GI. And what they do is they stop the time where they're moving CO2 out and the patient wakes up quicker and there's less time for airway management. And it's very, very safe. It was an anesthesiologist who delivered the lecture. Then I went to their booth and I was very amazed at that, learning that we're giving 60 and 70 liters of oxygen, and it's going to be a significant cost savings for just the right ASC, mainly GI centers.
The one I saw when I went to the Gettinger stand, because first of all, we all know Gettinger as sterilizers, and that's all it. And I was there with Kristen Jackson, our state secretary, and with Lisa. But specifically, OR lights, OR beds. They also have a Jackson table that converts into an OR bed, and I just bought a Jackson table. I'm quite annoyed that I did that. But it was amazing.
I think the takeaway from that, Jeff, is don't make any major equipment purchases until after these conferences.
Oh, absolutely. But I was amazed they had so much more. And the person joked with me. She said, "Oh, these are our best kept secrets." And I said, "Yeah, but that's not good for sales. Like, we had no idea you had this, and you had the OR lights. We just had no idea." And the cost compared to things, I have to say, they're probably trying to be competitive in the market with other things there. So that was just a company we've known forever that just we thought did one thing is doing all this other stuff. And that they're not even showing the sterilizers now. They're just showing all these other products. So that stunned me.
You know, Jeffrey, that's what's striking to me. We're getting a lot of engagement at our booth where people come up and say, "Oh, yeah, we work with you." And we look at the name tag, and we've never heard of this person before. And what they really meant to say is that they listened to the podcast. And they had no clue that we have ASC Central, asc-central.com, or that we have Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, and there's all these other services that we offer. And, so at the Finance Committee meeting, we're talking about the benefits of membership and ASCA. And we had the same point, is that when we start talking to people about the membership value for ASCA, they don't realize that something as simple as their online webinars are available to all the staff members of the surgery centers, not just for the leaders there. And that's a very valuable service. So, so another point to make is don't assume your customers, I guess I'm now talking to the vendors again, it's two sides. Don't assume your customers know what you actually are doing and what you sell. And for all of us that are purchasing this equipment and these supplies, don't assume we know everything that those companies can do, just to your point, Jeffrey.
The one thing I learned is in the tracking of things, ASCA tracks a lot of the legislative stuff, but in just different things, and maybe a way that in communicating with states better, finding out what's happening in states, because so many things with regulation, like we're facing in New York, we're on the cusp of getting cardiac. I mean, we had a very positive meeting the day before this with this first deputy commissioner in New York, but it was interesting to find out that we had to find a state, and we're seeking out states that are similar C-owned states to New York for what they did when they implemented it. And then there's no more identical state than Illinois. And I just walking up to the Illinois board member that I know, and she out there and said, "Oh, we've already passed it. And we're actually getting the regulations approved in a few weeks. They've already actually sent them out for comments and implementation, and said that our implementation should be there very shortly." That's the state we had to pay attention to. Now, mind you, we have a friendly relationship with them, which is great. But because it wasn't done through legislative initiatives, it's one of those things, and maybe in the aspect of talking with some of these things through the education committee and other things here, is that if there's more of a communication of what's happening regulatory in the states, because that is impossible for their legislative people to track. That's understandable. But making some sort of communication in that, I think, would be ideal, because right off the bat, that just lifted a weight off our shoulders right off the bat, because they'll accept an Illinois, New York will accept an Illinois, because they similar situation with the CON and everything else. What they do in regulations and implementation is something we can then present here in New York as a sample.
Okay. I have a question I would like to just ask in regards to that, in regards to regulations. I do join Steve Albrecht, his calls I think we have them on Tuesdays, once a month. And one of the things would be if there was a call maybe with the state executive directors or the lobbyists for all the states to actually say, are there just any updates on the regulations that are going on for ASCs? Because it's a great way to alert us, and we can at least then make contact with that state directly. That would really help.
Yeah, you're like reading minds because there's been a conversation. Jeffrey's been part of this conversation. Unfortunately, Simon Schwartz just left. We've been talking about trying to facilitate some type of a monthly conversation, inviting all of the leaders of all the, do it through Zoom, all of the leaders of the state associations, where we're not talking necessarily an organization here. We're just talking like, let's get together, we'll facilitate in whatever way. Maybe, we'll facilitate it through ASC Central, whatever. But we'll facilitate that type of a conversation on a monthly basis, because I think it has to be, to your point, Lisa, it has to be monthly. There's just too many things going on so that we don't have to wait until you, Jeff, run into somebody at a national conference to find out about these things. Just have an agenda, bring up these topics. Anybody can bring it up. Let the conversation go on for hours or whatever, is necessary in order to have that conversation. And then also, as we've been passionate about here at the podcast and with the state associations, is what other ways can we coordinate activities among state associations? Our November, by the way, third week in November, Thursday and Friday of third week in November will be the 2025 multi-state conference, 2 days, 16 credit hours of content, which is available to any state association that gives me a call and says they would like to participate with it. So I think what we want to do is we want to grow that concept and have more interaction. ASCA does a fantastic job of, bringing together organizations throughout the country. They do a great job of providing some resources to the state associations, people like Karen Newberry and Stephen Albrecht, who are available to you on a moment's notice and for these monthly things. But there's other things that we really have to think about, that ASCA, has other things. They've got other priorities, and nothing wrong with it. But we think that, maybe some states that are next to each other, might be able to coordinate in-person meetings. Maybe there are things that we, like right now we're talking about a national anesthesia conference, because, if we did that virtually, I think just everybody in the country would want to, attend that. Like we did one in New York State, recently. So those are conversations, Lisa, that are occurring right now. Again, talking about those interactions. The reason I haven't attended a single conference or session here is because all these conversations are occurring. We're running into people. None of these are planned conversations. It's just you run into people in the hallway. So, hoping our listeners are getting the point. This is an invigorating, it's an exhausting. I think I look at everybody here, and I'm not sure they're going to make it through the cocktail hour, to be honest with you. But I think that there is so much excitement about the industry here. And we go home from this, but we would be very remiss if we didn't keep the ball rolling. And Lisa, that's going to fall to people like you as executive directors of state associations. You've got to take that energy and now infuse it, throughout our state in New York. I'm in New York State and other states. So I do want to thank everybody. As always, this is a great opportunity to bring people together. We have one more session tomorrow. We can't figure out exactly when or where we're going to do it, but we'll try to bring as many people together at the very end. The problem is it's just before the big party. So it's always hard to get those people together for a podcast. But we're excited about this, and I do want to thank everybody for attending. And with that, we're going to cut this off, and we'll see you tomorrow.
It's been a long day, and the surveyors just left, and you are exhausted. And looking at the list of items that you have to address, you wonder, how can I deal with this and still take care of my patients? More importantly, you wonder, how can I ever keep up with all of the regulations, standards, and accreditation requirements? How can I always be prepared for a survey and reduce my stress levels? Well, that's what Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies does, day in, day out. We become your outsourced regulatory and accreditation resource. We can maintain your policy manual, develop your education programs, help out with fire and disaster drills, do your risk assessments, oversee your quality improvement activities, help run your quality improvement meetings and governing body meetings, and we can even prepare your monthly or quarterly financial statements and help you figure out where you are financially. We are a retainer-based service. We don't take ownership. We don't charge based on your revenue. We have one fixed monthly fee, and we can tailor your services to your exact needs. So whether you're looking for help getting over a survey, preparing for a survey, or looking for a long-term relationship to assist you with your ongoing regulatory and/or financial needs, please give us a call at 585-594-1167 or email us at info@ahstrategies.com. That is info@ah-strategies.com, or visit our website at ah-strategies.com.
This episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle is sponsored by Surgical Information Systems, RFX Solutions, MedServ, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. Surgical Information Systems provides cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers. RFX Solutions is your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software. MedServ, which offers the only digital narcotics cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping develop standardized processes and compliance, eliminate paper logs, and prevent drug diversion. And Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies is the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, visit our website at ascpodcast.com. This podcast is an educational and operational tool and is not intended to be a comprehensive resource for all rules, regulations, and standards that an ambulatory surgery center must meet. The advice provided should not be considered as, nor does it constitute legal advice or opinion. When reviewing specific situations involving legal and regulatory issues, attorneys and other professionals should be consulted. This has been a production of Eden Group Development. All rights are reserved. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, please email us at info@ascpodcast.com. We would love to hear your questions and comments. Please email us at comments@ascpodcast.com.